Hi, my name is Elena Medel. I am a Spanish writer. I was here in Prague during 2 months working on a project about Božena Němcová, a Czech writer who is considered the mother of Czech women writers. And I was also trying to finish my second novel. And when I was here, thanks to Prague UNESCO City of Literature, I was exploring the city and working on new ideas and discovering what Prague has to give me or has to give me. I applied for the residency, I think maybe 5 or 6 times before that, and because I wanted to come to Prague, to live here, to know the city, more than the experience of a tourist, and also because, as Virginia Woolf said, a woman who writes needs money and a place to write, and this kind of residencies gave us this opportunity to have money and a place to write. For me, spending 2 months in Prague, it was very special because I knew the city as a reader, thanks to films, to photographs, obviously, and living here gives you this chance of living not such as a tourist, because you are having your day by day here, and you are walking through the streets like not a Prague citizen, but almost a person who is working a new life here. But at the same time, you are a tourist. You have a return ticket and you have to go home. So this contradiction for me was very inspiring. And at the same time, I have the feeling of discovering a city that it's giving me unknown secrets and unexpected secrets. For example, my relation with the neighborhood that I was living in, or for example, literature and cinema and art that I didn't know about it before visiting Prague. There's one thing in Prague that was surprising for me, and that's the way that you have to walk in Prague, because there's no possibility of being walking with your cell phone. You have to look up, because in any building you can discover a detail that reminds you that a building is obviously a place with apartments where to live, where to sleep, where you save your life in some way. But there's also more than utility. There's beauty in the buildings, even in a street where you could think, okay, there's nothing interesting here. It's a building that reminds you that relation between beauty and day-by-day life. My first book was published 23 years ago. I wrote those poems when I was a teenager, and now I am going to be 14 years old. That's most of the half of my life writing and publishing. Obviously, I lived, I read, I wrote a lot, and even I refused a lot of my texts that I didn't want it to publish. So obviously those experiences are changing content all the time, the books that I am writing, the topics, but there's something nice, I think, in going back to those poems, to the person that I was when I was 14 years old, 15 years old, and discovering that some topics that I am writing about about now were in some way in those poems, and the work with language is not the same but is similar. That's nice to recognize myself in those constants during my writing life. When I write, I am writing from my place in the world, from my position in the world, and it's obviously the position of a woman who was born in Spain, who lives in Spain, in a working class family. And when I am even deciding what are the topics, or which is the language that I am using, these circumstances are defining my answer and defining my decisions. For me, writing from this feminist point of view, writing about women, I'm writing, as Elena Medel said, with the language of women, is a political decision, but also is like my natural and my spontaneous decision, because it goes with me in some way. Sometimes I have not problems, but sometimes I have the feeling that some people thinks that these female issues, or maybe writing a poem with a strong female voice, or writing a novel with a female main character, are like women things. But if you are writing a poem with a strong male voice, or a novel with a male main character, you are talking about all the world. Like a universal topic, and this is my fight as a writer, because I think, for example, in my last novel, it's a novel about money, it's a novel about power, and the main characters are women. I think we can talk about any topic, any issue, from the point of view of the women. When I wrote The Wonders, when I finished the writing of the novel, I thought that it was a very Spanish novel, because it's mainly based in Madrid. The story tells the last decades of the history in my country, and I thought that maybe in another countries with another culture, obviously with another language, they could be far from the story that I was telling. And all this experience with the translations teach me that we are more closer than we think. When I was talking with translators, talking with readers, even participating in book clubs in other countries, I am learning a lot about the history of other countries, and about even in different political experiences, we are living the same situations in the same times of our lives. For me, the most important thing of being a writer, I think it's maybe being a reader, because I think that books are always conversations. When you are reading, in some way you are answering to a question who someone asked you in the past, or even in your present. When I was reading these months, for example, I go back, I have my re-encounter with Kafka's books, and I had this feeling of, okay, I am talking with him in some way, because he's telling me things and asking me some questions, and me as a reader I have to answer. And when you are writing, you are giving these questions to your future reader. Then I think I can't imagine being a writer without being a reader. In every book that I am writing, there's in some way an answer to a reply to all the books that I have read in the past. I was very interested in knowing more about Božena Němcová because I was very interested, obviously, in her work, but also in her life, because it was a very different life for a woman writer in her time. She was born in a not very wealthy family. She was a humble woman with the ambition of being a writer in a moment that women writers were not very frequent, or at least they didn't have this visibility for her books or for her projects. It was very interesting for me to know how was her life as a writer. Here I discovered the different meanings of her life depending on the moment of the history and depending on the person who you were talking about. Božena Němcová means something different for a women writer, for example, here now in Czech Republic, means something different for a person who were reading her, I don't know, 20 years ago or 40 years ago, depending on the moment. And for me, that was very, very interesting. I am going to write about her in an essay that I am working now, and I think she's going to accompany me in some way during many time. I read Katerina Tuchkova thanks to the Spanish translation by Kepa Huarte. It was published by Periférica and Errata Naturae of her novel El legado de las diosas. Unfortunately, I don't know the name in Czech, and I was very impressed. I have a very strong impression of her work about how you can learn about a country, about the story of a country, about the society of a country, thanks to fiction. There's something very powerful, I think, in her work, and maybe I was telling it about my novel, but maybe we can think that there are many differences between our story, between our societies. When I was attending to the theatrical adaptation of Byla, one of the novels by Katerina, I had the feeling that I was attending, that I was seeing again some scenes of films about the dictatorship in Spain. The feeling was the same, and then I thought, okay, we are not so different. That is something that I have learned when I was reading and knowing Katerina's work. For the future residents, I encourage them for applying, of course, and trying. I was thinking about my project during years and trying to be here in Prague. I think it's an amazing opportunity to focus on your work in a very special city. I think that Prague gives you more than the postcard that you can have in your mind, and I encourage them to apply again. And of course, if you came in January and February as me, don't forget your coat.